Data privacy and behavioral advertising, it's obviously a big deal from an advertising legal perspective, just like it is for the rest of the industry. So as an attorney, we're constantly watching the advancements in this area. Frankly, the law hasn't caught up to where the marketers are and the companies are in developing these tools. And so it's always interesting to sort of be in no man's land as a lawyer to figure out how to advise clients and watch to see where things will go. I saw the other day where companies like Facebook and Google are now starting to sync up online behavior with retail behavior to try to figure out, okay, these people made purchases at a store. What were they doing on their computers before then to really incentivize that retail trip? And so you can imagine, the consequences of that. Now they know where you're going. They know where you're going on the computer. They know where you're going off the computer, and they're taking steps to sync that up. And it's pretty naive to think that they can't track this down to the individual. It is personally identifiable information they have access to, and it's just a matter of trusting them to use it responsibly. And which, as we've seen from these companies, they're in the business of making money with data and your information. And so it is hard for them to basically forego profit in exchange for, respecting your privacy. So really, from a legal perspective, I expect one of maybe three things to happen as far as enforcement moving forward. I think the first option, and the one that I'm cheering for, is really industry self-regulation. The ad industry has a strong history of self-regulation in areas like false advertising. We've created one of the greatest, with the help of the Better Business Bureau, one of the greatest self-regulatory mechanisms there is. It's become a model for other industries who are trying to stave off government intervention by taking care of a problem by themselves. So that there are many attempts out there. A lot of different trade organizations, the DMA, the Digital Advertising Association, Word of Mouth Marketing Association, that have promulgated different types of guidelines and rules in an effort to try to get advertisers on board to operate fairly and use this information responsibly, or else some of these other things will happen. The second one, and the one that I think most people fear, is some kind of congressional act. When Congress gets involved, they have a tendency to drastically overreach. And sure, they'll address that behavior that's negative behavior that they want to address, but in doing that, they often don't consider sort of the practical ramifications of that action. So you end up with a really broad act that not only stifles negative behavior, but then prevents some of the good things that this data and behavioral advertising has done. And so I think that would be really detrimental to our industry if Congress has to get involved. The last one would just be, the FTC currently has guidelines on how companies should act with your personal information and what they should do. Now, they're pretty ambiguous, generally about transparency and retaining records and security measures to make sure that your information isn't hacked into or stolen from somebody else. So there's a lot of play in there, a lot of ambiguity. But, it's also broad enough to where the FTC, if they want to slap down a Google or a Facebook, they've got the power to do it, I think, with these guidelines that are already out there. And so maybe it's just the FTC getting a little more aggressive with some of these companies. Because currently, I'm sure you've all seen that Facebook and Google, they're kind of the two worst actors here. They have been hit with sanctions, hit with some fines, but it's really a slap on the wrist based on the amount of money that they're making off your information. So I think it'd have to be a much bigger fine and much bigger action out of the FTC to settle, to deter these companies and settle this situation with any level of confidence. So we're still in a watch and see mode. It's a fun time for that, and we'll see what happens.